So, how many times throughout life have you heard things aren't always what they seem to be, right? So, I want you to keep that in mind. Keep that in your mind as we're looking at some photos from some mysterious cases. All right? Let's get to it.
Photographs usually help to solve a mystery, or at least provide clues that can take investigators on a new path to truth. In these cases, the photographs simply captured the mystery, or otherwise highlighted why everything might not be as it seems. Number 10. In 1973, 10 American climbers went on an expedition to climb the tallest mountain in the Western Hemisphere. Only 8 of them would return. 50 years on from the climb, a camera reignited interest in this unsolved case. The group were from the Mazamas climbing group based in Oregon. The team leader was a man named Carmi Defoe, who put together the expedition to climb Mount Aconcagua in Argentina. Among the group were NASA engineer John Cooper and a librarian named Janet Johnson. From the outside, it seemed as though there wasn't much team cohesion at all. When they arrived in Argentina, there was press interest in their climb. A journalist who interviewed the group before they left thought that they wouldn't work well as a team and believed they were all in it for themselves. The climb started badly, with altitude sickness hitting some of the members before they even reached the first camp. Over the next few days, more members of the team gave up on the climb and turned back. In the end, there were only 4 climbers left. Cooper.
That's a bad sign within itself. No, one leave, we all leave. We came here together, we leave together. That's simple, I would think. So if y'all not even willing to do that, no, y'all should have never even took this trip in the first place. I'm looking at this real suspicious at this point.
And Johnson were joined by Bill Zeller and Arnold McMillan. They were unprepared for the weather, and a storm had hit the mountain. At one point, the crew dug into the snow to form a shelter for the night, but they didn't have any sleeping bags. When they woke up, Cooper was half covered in a snowdrift. Cooper decided to quit not long after this and began the walk back to Camp 3 alone. The 3 remaining expedition members continued. They made it through the glacier and were almost at the summit when the 2 men realized Johnson was missing. They found her a little way down the mountain, mumbling to herself, and it seemed as though she had altitude sickness. The trio spent another night on the mountain, then began their descent. McMillan was sent ahead to get help while Zeller helped Johnson, but as they walked, Zeller and Johnson fell, and Zeller decided it would be better if he went alone. Zeller and McMillan managed to make it back to camp but suffered from hallucinations. Johnson would never return. Cooper also hadn't made it. The rest of the group returned to civilization, where there were a lot of questions about what had happened to Johnson and Cooper. The local police interviewed Zeller and McMillan and noted that their stories differed slightly, but this was blamed on altitude sickness and the exhaustion from their climb. Johnson and Cooper's fate were blamed on an accident. It wouldn't be uncommon for something terrible to happen out on a mountain, and the fact that they were all inexperienced at that altitude made it even more likely for an accident to happen. But in the
See, this is a reminder, a constant reminder of why. Just because you have book smarts, because they deemed all of them extremely intelligent, just because you have book smarts, don't mean you have street smarts. And they made a lot of different mistakes. They weren't prepared for the storms. That blew my mind. Like people leaving and going off by themselves. The altitude sickness wasn't a sign that maybe we should go back. Like it's a lot of red flags going on in this.
The next 2 years, both Johnson and Cooper's bodies were found. They had suffered wounds to the head, which resulted in their passing. Johnson's body had a rock placed on top, which seemed to have been put there deliberately. Investigators suspected someone wanted Johnson to look as if he'd had a fall. The case went cold, as circumstances in Argentina meant the investigation wasn't continued. But in 2020, a strange discovery was made. It was a camera with Janet Johnson's name written on a tape on its holder. The camera was in remarkably good condition, and the photographs she had taken were developed. It showed a normal climb up the Argentine mountains. One peculiarity was one of the last photos that Johnson had taken. It showed Johnson near the summit of Aconcagua, roped to the climber ahead of her. This is common practice for climbers, but if the group were all roped together, it would have been impossible for Johnson to have wandered off. Unfortunately, both Zeller and McMillan have passed away in the 50 years since the tragic climb, and it's unlikely any more truth about this mysterious case will ever be uncovered.
See, this is why I always say, if anybody asks you, hey bro, you want to go with me to climb a mountain? Don't go. Don't go. You don't know what their intentions are, and something can happen to you, and they can make it look like the mountain it just happened. It was a freak of nature. Something happened on the mountain. You fell, something like that. Like, don't go. Don't go. Matter of fact, you need to look at that person and be like, all right, we don't even need to be friends no more.
Number 9. As technology has advanced, we've been able to take photographs of things further and further away, unlocking many more unsolved mysteries that science cannot explain. In 1981, the Voyager 2 spacecraft passed Saturn and took stunning photographs of the second largest planet in our solar system. Some of those photographs captured a strange phenomenon that still has scientists scratching their heads. Saturn's ring system is the most pronounced in the solar system and is what makes the gas giant stand out. The planet has 7 main rings, which are each individually made up of many smaller rings. Those smaller rings are themselves made up of countless pieces of rock and icy materials. For the most part, an individual ring looks uniform, but the 1981 photographs showed something scientists weren't expecting. There were dark patches that seemed to look like lines on the rings. At first, the patches might look like smudges on the photograph, but analysis by scientists proved that they are actually there. These patches have been given the name spokes, and scientists are still trying to figure out how they were created. When the Cassini mission got close enough to the planet, it also captured photographs of these ring spokes, and the Hubble Space Telescope allowed us to continue monitoring the strange phenomenon. Scientists now know that the spokes are actually patches of small particles that have risen above the plane of the rings. They move at completely different speeds to the rings below them, and actually orbit in time with Saturn's magnetic field. But after a few orbits, the spokes fade away and return to the same orbit as the ring they originated from. Based on that, scientists are pretty sure it has something to do with Saturn's electromagnetic system, but there are still many possibilities that could be. It also has to be something that happens quickly. The spokes are relatively small, though the length of one can actually be larger than the diameter of the Earth. The fact that these are small suggests whatever happened over a short length of time, and it wasn't drawn out. The final clue scientists have is that the spokes appear to be seasonal. During Saturn's spring and autumn equinoxes, more spokes appear and look more pronounced. As the planet draws to its winter and summer solstices, the spokes appear less often until they disappear entirely. This seems to indicate that it has something to do with the sun. Like on Earth, Saturn's seasons are determined by how it's tilted towards our star. The rings are also tilted. Due to the length of its orbit, these seasons actually last around 7 Earth years. During the autumn and spring equinoxes, the sun's lights hit the rings edge on. Any other radiation thrown out by the sun would also hit the rings edge on.
Could you imagine dealing with 7-year seasons? 7 years of summer, 7 years of winter, and depending on where you live at, that could just be unbearable to deal with for 7 years. Like, it'd be a lot of locations that would be vacant, I would imagine. I'm not living up north and dealing with 7 years of blistering cold and snow. No way. No way.
If some kind of burst from the sun hit Saturn's rings edge on, it would cause the pattern we see with the spokes. Only a small area would be hit with whatever causes the debris to rise above the rings. It could be that this burst gives the particles here an electrical charge, which gradually fades over time. But that doesn't necessarily explain why the spokes disappear during the summer and winter months. The area that could be hit by a burst could actually be larger if it hit the face of the disk. The next equinox for Saturn takes place in 2025. Earth's telescopes will be pointed at the gas giant to take more photos that may help to get to the bottom of this mystery. Number 8. In June of 1998, a pilot flying over the outback in South Australia spotted something strange on the plains below. A geoglyph had been carved into the desert, the image of a man 2.7 kilometers tall.
And don't he look like he pointing to something? Looking like he's trying to guide you somewhere. Now, my mind, maybe I watched a lot of Indiana Jones as a kid. I'm thinking he pointing to some type of treasure. That's my first thought.
When he landed, he told locals about what he had seen, expecting to be informed of some ancient artwork made by Aboriginal people. It emerged that he was the first person to see a brand new piece of art. Satellite images from the Landsat thematic mapper showed that the strange geoglyph had appeared in late May or early June, in the space of just a few weeks. The geoglyph was so large that these photos taken from orbit could show the details. The geoglyph takes the form of an Aboriginal Australian man, complete with scarring and a headband. He holds a stick, or a woomera, and it looks as if he's getting into a position to throw it. It's located not far from the town of Mari, giving the geoglyph its common name, the Mari Man. Shortly after the geoglyph was discovered, faxes were sent to local businesses, claiming to be from the person who created the mysterious image. The faxes suggested that the government could use the new geoglyph as a tourist attraction, and references similar geoglyphs in England and the US. The fax may have been the first clue as to who was behind this strange piece of art. It used terms that seemed to indicate the writer was an American. There was also another clue that the creators were from the States. A small plaque was located near the head of the figure. On the plaque was the American flag, as well as the Olympic rings, and the inscription, "In honor of the land they once knew." His attainments in these pursuits are extraordinary, a constant source of wonderment and admiration. Many believe that the creator was an American, and some have suggested it might have been created by the US and Australian military. The Mari Man is located not far from the Woomera military base, a prohibited area that is shrouded in mystery. The facility would definitely have the ability to create the Mari Man. It's believed that GPS would have been necessary to create something so large and so detailed, but the technology wouldn't be widespread in the public at that time. It would have been available to the military, though. This explanation doesn't explain why the military would do something like this. Another theory is that it was the Aboriginal people living in the area themselves. This seems unlikely, though. The headband and hair of the Mari Man are closer in design to a group living in the Musgrave Ranges, rather than Arabana people, who were the traditional owners of this land. On top of this, the local Aboriginal people were generally unhappy about the Mari Man when he first appeared. Since then, the feelings towards the geoglyph have become mixed, but permission was given for local business owners to recarve the geoglyph in 2016, as the lines had faded due to wind and rain erosion. This restoration took 5 days, using better technology than would have been available to the original creators. Whoever...
Like, is it just me, or I see a ton of things going on, and maybe it's just my eyes just messing with me, but I see a ton of things. Like, he could be about to hit someone, or he could be showing someone something and pointing to it. And what it is outlined to be that he's pointing to, it could be water, it could be mountains, it could be, you know what I mean? I see so many different things outlined in this picture. Y'all might think I'm crazy, but I do. Like, they need to really, really review this, man. We could be overlooking something that's groundbreaking.
Whoever made the Mari Man was likely a large group of people involved in the project. This would be necessary for it to be done as quickly as it was. Over 25 years since the first photos of the Mari Man were taken, it remains just as much of a mystery as it was the day that it was discovered. Number 7. UFO images have fascinated the public for decades. Most of the more famous UFO photos are one-off images, or a handful of images of a single event. But at one site in Turkey, UFO sightings were so frequent that a night security guard was able to record footage on many different occasions. The sightings took place in Turkey, on the northern coast of the Sea of Marmara. Between 2007 and 2009, many locals spotted strange lights in the skies, often in the early hours of the morning or just before daybreak. Someone saw what appeared to be a craft of some kind. One of the people who saw these strange objects was a security guard named Yalcin Yalman. Yalman worked at a resort that had a good view of the sea. It also apparently gave him a good view of this mysterious unidentified flying object when it came to visit. Yalman saw the UFO many times, and at one point he decided he would be ready for the next appearance. He took a camera and tripod with him to the resort. When the UFO appeared again, he captured it on camera. Over the course of 3 years, Yalman took countless videos of the mysterious craft. It appeared to be crescent-shaped and reflected the light from the moon. It would hover near the horizon, sometimes low and near the surface of the water, and other times higher up. Some footage, apparently taken months apart, clearly shows the strange object. 2 bright arcs reach towards one another, with a darker gap between them, but other images more closely resemble a cut-off disc. In all the footage, the UFO remains stationary. It's never seen entering or exiting the frame, and the only movement comes from the camera itself.
See, we need to gather all of the footage and content that we have and start trying to decipher the pattern. Because I feel like we go through these ups and downs, ebbs and flows of times where we see UFO, UAP activity, right? And that may be a way for us to connect the dots. Because like right now, we're not hearing, or at least I'm not hearing too much that's going on. Not hearing it. But then all of a sudden you'll get this ton of activity. And that has to say something to us. That has to mean something. That during certain times, it seems like it's just a lot of activity going on.
While not as famous, photographs were also taken of mysterious lights in the sky and bright orbs that seemed to hover over the water. The UFO footage went viral, especially when it seemed as if the occupants of the craft had all been captured. A still from one of the videos, artificially enhanced, seems to show 2 alien creatures inside the ship, and they resembled typical gray aliens. In Turkey, the footage allegedly started a trend of UFO hunting, but the only images of the Kumburgaz UFO come from Yalman himself. Some have claimed these images to be the best UFO footage ever captured. Analysis of the video and images showed they hadn't been manipulated by computers. Whatever is in the videos and pictures was actually physically there. It doesn't mean that everybody believes this is an actual UFO, though. A number of theories have been put forward. Some suggest that the 2 arcs of the UFO would actually be sea walls recorded through a fisheye lens. Yalman could actually have been recording the CCTV monitor at his work. Other theories include that this was the lights from a cruise ship or a reflection of Yalman's own camera. Most of these theories don't make sense if others in Kumburgaz spotted the UFO.
And I hate that they try to make people feel bad when they come forward with footage that it seems very, very strange and peculiar and could be identified as something unidentified. I hate how they try to make you feel or try to downplay it and make you look crazy.
It's alleged that it was seen by many witnesses in the village, but if that were the case, it doesn't make sense why nobody else captured any footage of this alleged UFO. If this is an actual UFO, then the biggest mystery, after what it is why it chose to visit this village so often, and why it went away. Number 6. In August of 2023, 2 hikers in the forests surrounding the Harz Mountains took a chilling photograph of a figure dubbed the Wolfman. Stories of the Wolfman in the region dated back 5 years, and had even convinced local authorities and the fire brigade that someone was living out in the wilderness. Who he is and what he's doing in the forest remains a mystery. The photograph...
That's his business. That's his... And matter of fact, we need to mind our business and leave him alone. He seems to be quite content and not bothering nobody.
The photograph was taken by Gina Weiss as she and her friend hiked near the ruins of a castle. They were approaching some sand caves when they spotted the figure. In the photograph, a man who appears covered in dirt sits in the sand and seems to be drawing. He held a wooden stick in one hand. According to the tourists, the supposed wolfman saw them and stood. They met eyes and stared at one another for about 10 minutes. None of them spoke. How the encounter ended isn't clear, but it doesn't seem as if the wolfman attacked the hikers. For many, this was the proof that they'd been looking for after 5 years of rumors and stories about someone living in the woods. The forest of the Harz Mountains has been the home to strange and paranormal stories for centuries. In the medieval period, it was believed that witches congregated in the woods, especially on April 30th or May Day's Eve. It was then that their powers were most potent. But according to legend, an English saint banished the witches, leaving behind only the interesting story for a celebration that continues in the region to this day. Later, stories about werewolves were set in the forest, but in the late 2010s, stories of something wearing wolf's fur living in the forest took a more real turn. People reported seeing a man wearing either wolf's fur or a wolf's costume wandering around. In 2023, one man called the police for help, claiming that the wolfman was running around, and another individual said that he saw a firebolt. Even members of the local fire brigade have supposedly seen the wolfman. Others have seen evidence that someone at least has been living in the forest. They've found makeshift shelters and fire pits, and are concerned that the individual's activities could cause a forest fire. Others are more skeptical about the existence of any strange things in the woods. One volunteer claimed the stories were nothing more than modern legends, and called the photograph a hoax. If the wolfman is real, many would like to get to the bottom of who he actually is. It's unlikely that the figure is something paranormal. Even if the sighting was somewhat near a location called Wolfsburg, stories of werewolves in the region are a much more modern invention than the ancient legends about witches and the devil. The story of this particular wolfman only dates back to around 2018. Of course, all ancient paranormal stories started at some point, and it's possible this is just the early days of a legend that will once be ancient. It seems more likely that the individual...
That's what y'all better hope it is. That's what y'all better hope. But it's funny how they quick to just dismiss it or downplay it or say it's a legend, which it could be, but it's still rumors of Sasquatch and Bigfoot still floating around, right? Still sightings, still videos happening all the time. What's the difference?
Individual is an ordinary person who's gone off to live in the woods. Authorities noted that he seemed to know how to live out in the wilderness, and other than one call to the police for help, he doesn't seem to be hurting anybody. This could just be someone trying to escape modern life, who may not even know the attention they've been getting around the world. Number 5. Ever since the first photographs of Mars were taken, humans have been trying to identify structures that could indicate something once lived on our closest neighbor. The most prominent feature humans were fascinated by was dubbed the face of Mars. The famous photograph appears to show a human-like face looking out into the darkness of space. There was speculation about whether this may have been created by an alien civilization that wanted us to know they were there. Unfortunately, for those who believe in life on the Red Planet, later images showed that it's nothing more than a strangely shaped rocky area. The shadows in the original image helped to enhance the features that people believed were human. Despite the proof that this was nothing more than an optical illusion, that hasn't stopped people from poring over the photos of Mars in search of more evidence that there was once advanced life on the planet. The fact that NASA has multiple rovers on the planet that have sent back images has only given alien hunters more photos to look at. In recent years, everything from a leg bone to a witch has supposedly been spotted on the surface of Mars. Each time, the official answer has been the same. These are nothing more than rocks. But one strange photograph stands out above the others. It was taken by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, a NASA satellite in orbit around the Red Planet. The orbiter sits 180 miles above the surface of Mars and can take photographs with a resolution of 1 foot per pixel. It leads to some very detailed photographs, but smaller objects can be hard to make out. One of the objects captured in a photograph by the orbiter appears to be a monolith. The rock stands out from the surrounding plain and appears to have straight edges. Its shadow stretches out behind it, but even without this shadow, It's clearly something quite tall. Another photograph shows the object from directly above, making it seem even more strange. The top of the object appears to be square. Many compared the creepy Mars monolith to the structure featured in 2001: A Space Odyssey. They suggested that some ancient alien civilization placed the monolith on Mars, and they're waiting for humans to go and explore it in person. Some have pointed to another similar monolith on Mars' moon of Phobos. The Phobos monolith is even more eerie. It was first photographed in 1998 and has been described as a building-sized boulder. For people such as Buzz Aldrin, the Phobos monolith in particular is a sign of extraterrestrial life. There doesn't appear to be anything else around it, or anything that it may have broken away from. If the two monoliths were created by extraterrestrials, it could be that they were designed to interact with one another. But scientists are certain that this isn't the case. The location of the Mars monolith is near a cliff's edge where there could have been landslides. It's much more likely this is where the monolith originated from.
So if we're under the belief that there's a possibility that that could have been placed there or formed by some type of, unknown life form or aliens, or however you want to classify them, what does that say to y'all? Because that to me says, okay, they know we've been there, or we have a presence there via those rovers, and they still not making themselves known. At that point, that signals to me that, all right, maybe these are not friendlies that we're dealing with, right? Because if they know we've been there and they've been there, then we would have met up by now. But we haven't. So to me, that says, okay, our first contact might not be a good one.
It could naturally be rectangular in shape, but this could simply be due to the resolution of the cameras. If it was just under a foot long, it would appear as a straight line simply due to the pixels. Scientists believe that the monolith on Phobos is ejecta from an impact at some point in the moon's history. That doesn't mean it's not interesting, though. Phobos itself is something of a mystery to scientists, and the rock could provide answers about what the moon is made from and how it originated. Number 4. Fort Morgan is one of the most haunted places in Alabama. As with any famously haunted location open to the public, many tourists and ghost hunting teams have visited the fort to try to contact the paranormal spirits that call the site home. At least one of these captured a photograph that might include a ghostly presence. Construction of Fort Morgan began shortly after the War of 1812. When it was built, it was described as one of the finest examples of military architecture in the world. The star shape made it easy to defend, and its position allowed forces stationed there to protect the coasts against attacking ships. Much of the haunted history of Fort Morgan dates back to the Civil War. It was quickly captured by Confederate forces after Alabama seceded and helped blockade runners. In August of 1864, Union forces attacked in the Battle of Mobile Bay. Part of the fort caught fire, and many soldiers lost their lives. It was during the Civil War that the majority of the dark stories surrounding Fort Morgan originated, as well as many of its ghost stories. Most of the hauntings at the fort are auditory. There are many stories of visitors hearing the ghostly screams of soldiers who were caught in the fire, or other attacks during the war. One legend surrounding the fort is that if a visitor stands in a certain spot at midnight, cannon fire can be heard. Some apparitions have also been seen, with ghostly figures in period clothing wandering around the corridors. But the most commonly seen apparition apparently passed away much more recently. The fort remained in use until after the Second World War. During that time, the people stationed there didn't see much fighting, but were training to be sent out to wars overseas. According to the stories, prisoners were also held at the fort in the early 20th century. One of these lost his life in a cell deep within the building. His cries are still supposed to be heard and are one of the most common paranormal occurrences in this haunted hotspot.
Now, I could see some form of government taking this place and using it as like a torture location for them, for prisoners or anything like that. Like, this would be the perfect isolation for them to do so. Yeah, like something like a Guantanamo Bay or something like that. This this stands out to me, man. Now watch later on, several years down the line, it'll come out and we'll hear a story like that come from this place.
Another common occurrence is the ghost of a young woman. According to one story, sometime in the 19th century, a young woman was attacked and passed away. It's not clear if she was actually attacked at Fort Morgan, or if her spirit was drawn there, but the story says that she's still searching for the person who took her life. The ghostly woman is a commonly seen apparition, and her ghost would definitely stand out among the Civil War soldiers. It may be this woman who was captured on camera by a ghost hunting group in 2008. The photo was taken by Richard Johnson from the Second Sight Paranormal Group and is possibly the best ghost photo taken at Fort Morgan. It was taken in the early hours of the morning during an investigation at the location. Smoke seems to have formed the shape of a person in a room where smoke or fog wouldn't naturally be able to get in. The photo has gone on to inspire other ghost hunting groups to investigate the fort. The paranormal activity has never been fully explained, and it remains a popular tourist location for those who want to experience a ghostly encounter.
How much would it take for y'all? How much would somebody have to pay y'all to go out there and spend like a few days at the facility, not leave off and go to a hotel or something? No, stay there for a few days. What's your price?
Number 3. Sometimes a picture can be deceiving, and what looks like one thing is actually another. But sometimes the initial assumption is correct, which only leads to unexplained questions. In 1999, scientists took a photo of a strange nebula roughly 1,500 light years from Earth. The nebula was given the name NGC in 1999, but it's more commonly known today as the Cosmic Keyhole. The Cosmic Keyhole is located near the Orion Nebula, in an area of space where there's a lot of star formation. It's a reflection nebula, which means it reflects the light of nearby stars, rather than shining itself. These types of nebula are sometimes called star nurseries. They're made up from dust and gas clouds which are gradually drawn together. Over time, more and more material is drawn together until stars are formed. Photographs of the Cosmic Keyhole show what looks like one very bright young star at its center. Later images revealed that there are actually at least 3 stars, though only...
Why wouldn't that be considered like a black hole? Just the cosmic key. I don't know. That could be another form of a black hole.
Only one is visible to the human eye. Scientists have dubbed the system V380 Orionis. It's these stars that produce the light that the rest of the nebula reflects. But most people viewing photos of NGC 1999 are more drawn to a shape beside the star, rather than the star itself. Completely dwarfing the star is a large black shape, which seems to resemble a keyhole. When the nebula is viewed as a whole, the keyhole is hard to see, but zoomed-in shots of the star make it very clear. It stands out next to the light-colored gas and dust that surrounds the star, and looks ominous given its obvious size. At first, scientists thought this was something called a dark nebula. Dark nebulas are formed in the same way as reflection nebulae, but the material is so dense that light is obscured from view rather than reflected. It simply meant that this part of the nebula was much more dense than the surrounding area. This wasn't too strange, even if the shape of the dark patch did make it look like something from a science fiction novel. But more photographs of the nebula using different technology revealed this wasn't the case at all. Infrared cameras can look past the dense clouds of dark nebulae and see the light sources that they might be hiding. It views wavelengths that are invisible to the human eye, but in this case, the cameras picked up nothing. Rather than a dense cloud, there was actually nothing there. The keyhole really was a hole, though probably not for some kind of cosmic key. How this strange anomaly came to be is a mystery. Scientists have a few theories about the cause of the rift. Jets of gas from other stars could have pushed through a cloud that was once in that area. Radiation from an older star could have caused the gases in this area to dissipate. either one of these would be terrifying to imagine if it happened somewhere a little closer to Earth. If something like this happened here, it would have terrible consequences for life on our planet. Thankfully, it seems likely that whatever the cause, it happened during the star formation process, and is unlikely to happen to our sun. Number 2. Beneath the surface of Turkey's largest lake are the remains of a lost settlement that may be thousands of years old. Photographs taken during an expedition in 2017 revealed details about these possibly ancient structures, but they also left archaeologists with questions that haven't yet been answered. The area around Lake Van in Turkey has been settled for thousands of years. It was the perfect location for early human civilizations, and during the Iron Age, the Urartu Kingdom formed in the area. Since the Urartu civilization was discovered in the 19th century, historians have slowly pieced together more and more about these ancient people, but there's always more to learn about the distant past. Even how the Urartu civilization ended is unclear, with debates over whether it was the Medes or Cyrus the Great who conquered the kingdom. So any ancient ruins left behind would be invaluable to scholars. A group of divers were attracted to Lake Van, curious about what might lie on the lake bed. There were already known archaeological sites, including one for a Russian ship dating back to 1915. According to the group, they were told that there wouldn't be much to see in the region that they had chosen, but they had heard rumors of underwater structures that may have been seen below the water. Other archaeologists not involved with the group claimed that surveys had already revealed that there was something down there, but nobody had been down to explore what was there. The group of divers included underwater photographers who captured striking images of stone structures on the lake bed. Some were believed to have partially been buried beneath the layers of mud at the bottom of Lake Van, with only the very tops protruding. Some of the structures were clearly man-made. The rocks had been cut in a specific pattern to create ashlar walls, and some inscriptions were even found. The divers also found an etching of a lion, which they believed looked as if it was created during the Urartu period. The lion was a popular motif at this time. News of the discovery made headlines around the world, but some archaeologists weren't so sure this was really an ancient castle, as the divers believed. Instead, they believed it was something that had been constructed during the Middle Ages. It could still be over 1,000 years old, but much younger than an Urartu castle. It's believed that the stones were originally cut by the ancient people, but were reused by builders in the Middle Ages. The inscription.
For what though? I'm staring at it and trying to make sense of it. You know what I mean? Because I'm always saying, bro, like the ocean is nothing but a big, huge underwater museum. That's basically what it is. A huge museum underwater, man, with a ton of history. So I'm looking at this and I'm staring, trying to make sense of it, and I have nothing. Nothing. I'm drawing a blank. I can't make out what this could possibly be.
Especially one talking about an Urartu king worshipping an Urartu god were clearly ancient, but factors such as how the stones were actually layered together made archaeologists doubt the entire structure was that old. In some ways, if the castle was more recent, the find was even more chilling. Whether it was built 1,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, the structures were built on dry land. Lake Van's water level varies often. It's currently many hundreds of feet higher than during the time of the Urartu Kingdom. What were once villages along the shoreline are now deep underwater. The water levels changing so much over the course of 3,000 years is understandable, but in just 1,000 years, and for the medieval castle to be buried by lake sediments, is much more scary to imagine.
And maybe me not being able to make sense of anything I'm seeing is a testament to how old it is and how much it's probably, you know what I mean, dissolved or restructured due to the water being underwater for so long. You know what I mean? Not everything is going to be in perfect condition, so I get that. But yeah, maybe that's the case. But yeah, I couldn't make sense of any of it.
Number 1. In 1999, spiritualist and medium Colin Grant visited Gravefriars Cemetery in Edinburgh, Scotland. Grant had come to perform an exorcism on the famously haunted location. During the exorcism, he said that this would be the end of him, and 6 weeks later, Grant had passed away. During the exorcism, a creepy photo captured a mysterious figure lurking in the locked and empty church adjacent to the site. Colin Grant was described as a respected medium. He was a minister at the Spiritualist Church and an honorary member of the Spiritualist National Union. According to the Herald, he was the first psychic clairvoyant to set up a shop in Edinburgh and seemed to really care about his clients. About a year after his visit to Gravefriars, he had appeared in a newspaper article about the rise of fake psychics and how damaging they could be to the public. He was someone who took his work communicating with the paranormal very seriously, so he seemed to be the perfect person to respectfully deal with the hauntings that had plagued the nearby Gravefriars cemetery for years. Gravefriars was used as a cemetery for hundreds of years, and during that time it witnessed some horrific acts, including the aftermath of the Battle of Bothwell Bridge of 1679. This was a battle against the so-called Covenanters, who were in rebellion against the king. 1,200 prisoners were brought to a field that bordered the graveyard, which was used as an open-air prison. Many lost their lives during the ordeal and were buried at the cemetery. Also buried here was the judge Sir George Mackenzie. Mackenzie was the person responsible for sentencing the Covenanters to their brutal punishment. He also persecuted witches and earned the nickname Bloody Mackenzie. According to local legend, it's Mackenzie who haunts the cemetery, and he was the one that Colin Grant had gone to exorcise. Mackenzie was buried in a mausoleum. In 1998, a homeless man seeking shelter from a stormy night broke into the mausoleum. He went to the bottom of the crypt, then accidentally broke through the floor and landed on a pile of bones. The man escaped, but some believe that something else escaped with him, the Mackenzie poltergeist. There had been paranormal activity before this point, especially surrounding the mausoleum, but things became even worse after. Dozens of people on ghost tours through the cemetery suffered scratches or fainting spells. Most ghost tours were banned, and only one was permitted access, but the strange paranormal attacks continued. It's unclear whether Grant volunteered to perform the exorcism, or if he was asked by the local authorities to do something about the haunting. But what is known is that in late November of 1999, the exorcism took place. There were only 2 people with him at the time. A journalist and a photographer from the local newspaper had come to document the experience. Both were skeptical, but the longer they stayed in the graveyard, the more they felt that they were not alone. Grant said that he couldn't confront
That was your warning right there to go, to leave, to get out of there. They always say you get a warning, and at this point you got a decision to make. After this, there's no turning back. That was their warning to get up out of there.
Mackenzie's ghost, but was instead trying to release the spirits of the hundreds of people who were trapped there. During the exorcism, photographer Susan Burrell captured an image of Grant in front of the church, holding out a candle. Behind him, Burrell claimed to have seen a shadowy figure moving inside the church. When her photographs were later developed, she realized she had captured the figure on camera. Grant was especially worn out by the ordeal, and apparently collapsed not long after the photograph was taken. He regained his health and tried to move on from that day, and 6 weeks later, in January of 2000, he suffered a heart attack while at his shop. Grant's family did not believe that his experience at Gravefriars caused his passing, but they do believe that the location is severely haunted. But there are some that connect Grant's strange experience and the ominous figure captured in the mysterious photograph to his later passing. The figure has never been completely explained. It may be nothing more than a trick of the light, but if the figure was actually moving, it might be something more paranormal.